This episode of PokeClass is sponsored by .deck.co.uk, your number one place to go for all of your Pokemon TCG needs in the UK and Europe. This new online portal features all of the resources a competitive Pokemon player needs to succeed in the competitive scene. Whether it's card singles, tournament information, accessories, or even complete tournament-ready decks that you need, .deck is where you need to be. This week's special are hard-to-find pre-release sleeves for just £5 for a 60-sleeve pack. We've got Celebi, Dusknoir, and more in stock, so make sure you get them while they're still available. So make sure you head over to www.deck.co.uk after the episode to grab yourself a bargain. Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 59 of PokeClass, where it's finally here, Next Destinies. This set is due for release on the 8th of February, with Summer City Championships over here in the UK continuing just the weekend after, so we better get our hands on these cards quick to build new decks or revamp our old ones with these brand new cards. The long-awaited return of the EX cards are now here, and we have just a handful of new trainers and supporters to add to our card bank. So let's get straight into my Next Destiny set review. So 99 cards really isn't a huge set compared to some of them in the past, but we do have the exciting return of Pokemon EX to spice up the set just a little bit. For this review, I'm just going to pick the best of the bunch from all the regular Pokemon and then move on to the tiny amount of trainers we've been given, and then finish off with a full EX analysis. So let's kick things off with our first card of the review. And the first card is a Moongus, which has a very interesting coming into play ability called Spore Prize. When you evolve your Foongus into this heavy mushroom, you can inflict both poison and confusion onto your opponent's active Pokemon at the same time. Now this strikes me as a very gimmicky card at the moment, since it has really low HP, a terrible attack, and is weak to fire, but I'm sure some people will try this out when they start testing out Trainer Lock with the newest set. The next card on the list is Arcanine, which is verging on competitive with its stats. This Pokemon is a stage 1 with a single ability called Blazing Mane and an attack that can deal 100 damage for 3 energy, not too shabby. The ability is pretty nice since it inflicts burn upon any Pokemon that damages Arcanine in the form of an attack, which could deal some nice damage on the opponent's Pokemon when flips go your way. Unfortunately, the next attack is going to have to be compared to Reshiram since the energy cost and effect are very similar. For Arcanine's 3 energy attack, you do 100 damage with a discard of 2 energy if you flip tails, whereas Reshiram does 120 for the same amount of energy with a definite discard. Reshiram is a basic, which gives it the upper hand already and has the same HP, so it is, in theory, faster. So I'm not quite sure if Arcanine redeems its playability with an average ability of its own. Nevertheless, it's nice to see some of the older Pokemon going back to the trading card game. Up next is Vanillux, who sports exactly the same stats as its Noble Victory's predecessor, but holds an ability and a single attack. The attack really isn't too great, hitting for 60 for 3 energy and then 10 more for each retreat cost on the defending Pokemon. That means you'll be doing a maximum of 100 damage, which is mediocre in this kind of format. Slippery Souls, the ability, is where things get interesting, since it allows you to switch your own active Pokemon with one of your bench, and then your opponent is forced to do the same. For players of last format, this will bring to mind Warp Point, a very highly used card, but in trainer form, so it was much better. With Vanillux being a stage 2 with not a very good attack, being able to use a Warp Point effect really isn't going to be that useful in your strategy. I would however consider this under Train Lock, but it just adds another stage 2 to your already complex strategy. The next card is Luxray, returning to the format in its stage 2 form this time. Now this card really doesn't have that much going for it, but I just wanted to give it a mention because of its fairly nice HP of 140 and single energy attack Flash Impact, which many of you will have heard of before. For 1 lightning, you get to do 60 damage and then 20 to one of your own Pokemon, which could be used very effectively when we're talking about dragons, similar to the Donphan Dragon strategy, but more selective. I think people will try and use this card for the easily accessible damage output and potentially creative use of the self-damage, but it being a stage 2 and not having free retreat really doesn't make an impact like its level X did a while back. Sticking with the lightning types brings us to Zeb Striker, which I'm only mentioning because of its disconnect attack. For a single lightning and colourless energy, you do 40 damage, and then the opponent can't use any item cards on their next turn. The after effect of this attack is extremely nice, but the damage output is going to be really slow while you're setting up some kind of supporting strategy to keep the trainer lock going. It does have free retreat and is only a stage 1, which makes it very versatile, but all it needs is a supporting strategy to back it up, and we may see trainer lock being implemented in a very different way in the coming weeks. On to psychic types now, and this brings us to a Pokemon which has been hyped quite a bit before the setlist reveal, and that is Gardevoir. Many people will be happy to see a playable Gardevoir back in the format, but it works a lot differently than before. Psychic Mirage is its ability, and it simply allows you to count every psychic energy attached to your Pokemon as 2 psychic energy instead. Now this may bring many players to an instant combo with Mewtwo EX as a form of accelerating energy, but looking at Gardevoir being a stage 2 with just 110 HP and pairing that with the fact it has psychic weakness, and you've got yourself a problem. Mind Shock isn't too bad of an attack because it only takes 2 psychic energy when paired with the ability, but it just seems a little too fragile to be in the same format as an extremely heavy psychic hitter ready to take it down in one attack. I can definitely see its uses in the format, even potentially with our old friend Gothitelle, don't get me wrong, but it could just be a little bit too fragile and too slow to fit in at the moment. Only time will tell. Another psychic Pokemon is up next in the form of Mashana, which at first glance doesn't have the best of stats. It has 100 HP, a hefty 3 retreat cost, and has a horrible attack. The ability certainly makes up for all of this. Forewarn is similar to Uxie Level X's Poke Power of last format, where you can look at the top 2 cards of your deck and choose one, but this time you put the unwanted card back on top of your deck rather than underneath. This is a big difference since you know what card you're going to be drawing the turn after, if you don't use some form of shuffle draw that is. Where I can see this card working is in Trainer Lock, simply because it can be easily captured up and KO'd, or just be left there with a huge retreat cost and underwhelming attack. At least Uxie had a good attack. Trainer Lock suffers from bad draws sometimes, and this card can help you to get through your deck a bit faster, but will it find a way into the competitive scene? Maybe Chandelure could do with this little trick. Onto the Darkness Pokemon now, and here comes a very strange ability indeed. Shiftry bears an ability called Giant Fan, which is activated when Shiftry is evolved and allows you to flip a coin. If heads, you choose one of your opponent's Pokemon and force them to shuffle it and all cards attached to it back into their deck. However, once again this card suffers from not being very good otherwise. The attack really isn't going to be taking any KOs anytime soon with this awkward cost to boot, which means that when it hits the field it is rendered completely useless. It could even fail and leave you with a useless space wasted on your bench, kinda forcing you to run Seeker as well. If the effect works, then this could be awesome against decks with heavy support Pokemon such as Emboar, and more importantly Vileplume, but the flip really does stop this card from being at all useful right now. The last standard Pokemon of this analysis is Cinccino, yet again for its ability. Smooth Coat simply allows you to flip a coin every time Cinccino is damaged by an opponent's attack, and if heads, the attack does nothing. Pair this with the fact that it will take 3 energy to do 50 damage with a possible 100 next turn, and you have a risky yet slightly playable card. The damage nullifying ability could keep Cinccino in play long enough to take some slow prizes, but as mentioned earlier, Catcher stops the damage building up from Echoed Voice and having to hit a Cinccino even in the first place. This will be another Pokemon that can both live and die from a coin flip, literally. On to trainers and supporters now, and unfortunately we only have 5 of them to look through, so I'll make it quick so we can get onto those EXs. First up is Silent, our only supporter from the set, and it lets you take 3 basic energy from your deck and put them straight into your hand. Not bad. I can see this being incredibly useful in decks that utilise Pokemon such as Emboar and Feraligatr, but those aren't really played anymore. Is this the comeback of Stage 2 energy acceleration? On to trainers, and we hit 2 more additions to the Ball trainer cards printed throughout history. Heavy Ball allows you to search your deck for a Pokemon with 3 or more retreat cost and put it into your hand, which is going to help out decks that utilise Magnezone quite a bit, giving them 1 more card which can search out your key main attacker and draw support. Level Ball is very similar, but it allows you to search your deck for any Pokemon with 90 HP or less and put it into your hand. I can't think of anything which will benefit from this speed element too much, since Cinccino and Donphan both are over the HP requirement of this card, and other fast attackers just don't fit the bill. The biggest question to be asked here is whether these cards will be used in place of Pokemon Communication, or just as well as to get fast Pokemon search. Communication seems better since it has no clause in which Pokemon it can search out, but you have to have a Pokemon in hand to use it in the first place, which is the best part about the ball cards. Both of them need to be tested fully, but I feel the ball cards won't replace communication, just enhance the speed of some decks that needs the Pokemon to fit the ball clauses a lot quicker. Up next are the two Stadium cards, Pokemon Center and Sky Arrow Bridge. Pokemon Center is interesting since it allows you to heal 20 damage off of one of your bench Pokemon a single time during your turn, which could revoke a strategy where you retreat your Pokemon to heal it after some heavy damage taking and bring it back to attack when it's healed. But Pokemon Catcher could have something to say about that. The idea is nice and can help against spread decks such as Kyurem, since you will be able to control what's get KO'd the following turn, but we could see it being used as a counter stadium to the next card. Sky Arrow Bridge is yet another card to be added to the arsenal of cards dedicated to basic Pokemon. While this stadium is in play, all basic Pokemon retreat costs are reduced by 1, making them much more manageable or even free in the game. This is going to help out a ton of decks and may bring back starters such as Smeargle to the table, since the retreat cost won't be such a big deal since it won't be there. Stars of 6 corners such as Virizion will receive free retreat costs, so definitely prepare for this stadium with some big basics of your own, or simply a stadium to counter this one being in play at all. Finally, we move on to Energy with 2 special energy cards being released, one of those being double colourless reprint, making sure that it stays around for at least another rotation. The most important to note is Prism Energy, another card for the basics. This card is basically Rainbow Energy for basic Pokemon, where you don't apply the single damage counter. This makes decks such as 6 corners even more harder to KO since the rainbow damage doesn't occur, and now they have a possible 8 special energy cards to serve multiple energy at the same time. You could also see a small rise in Mew decks, since this card also helps it serve flexible costs of Pokemon in the Lost Zone much easier. Expect to see this card played a lot, which could also see a rise in the amount of Lost Remover being played. Only time will tell. So there you have it, on to the new EX Pokemon you've been waiting to hear about, of which there are 6 in total. So without further ado, here's the first one, Shaymin EX. This card is very interesting since it has a really low 110 HP for an EX, since some of them max out at 180, but I wouldn't think that this card would stay in play very long due to it being a late game sweeper. Its second attack, Revenge Blast, does 30 damage times the amount of prize cards your opponent has taken. This means that if your opponent has taken 5 of their prizes, you can be doing 150 damage for just 2 energy, definitely making up for its lack of HP. In a deck such as 6 corners, you could bring this to the field in just a single turn and start making an incredible comeback by hitting for huge amounts of damage each turn out of nowhere. To be fair, it is extremely fragile, which means you need to use it carefully, since you don't want to be giving up an unnecessary 2 prizes. But if they've already taken 5 prizes, then zoom straight ahead with this guy, definitely one to watch out for. Next up is Reshiram EX, furthering on its reprint counterpart by being able to hit for 150 damage. Brave Fire costs 2 fire and a double colourless to do 50 damage, but you must flip a coin which does 50 damage to yourself if it lands on tails. First off, being able to hit for 150 with the help of cards such as Emboar and Typhlosion is incredibly fast and could be very destructive in the first few turns. But if you do flip tails, Reshiram goes from being huge to having just 130 HP. You can get around this though by utilising cards such as Eviolite to reduce self damage and Fliptini to go for the flip again. Either way, this card is extremely good in a format with such good fire-based support right now. Expect Reshiram, Typhlosion or Emboar players to be testing this out straight away. Up next is Kyurem EX, possibly the worst one of the set. The first attack does 60 for 3 energy and the second does just 120 for 4 energy, and you can't use it the next turn. Not good at all. Considering the Kyurem from Noble Victories bore a whole new deck, this one is severely disappointing. If the second attack did 150, like the other 2 dragons, then we may have something good here, but otherwise this just doesn't have the attack strength that giving up 2 prizes is worth. To go with your Reshiram comes Zekrom EX, another great attacker with awesome synergy with Electric. Zekrom's Strong Volt does 150 damage for 4 energy, with the downside that you must discard 2 energy of your choice from that Pokemon. Now players of the current format will see straight away that the strategy of this with Electric. By attacking with Strong Volt, you'll be able to put energy into the discard to attach straight back onto the field with Dynamotor. This could be anything such as a normal Zekrom, another Zekrom EX or Magnezone. Either way, you're going to be doing some huge amounts of damage quite consistently with this card, so watch out for another addition to the lightning Pokemon of the current competitive scene. The second to last Pokemon we have is Regigigas EX, which some players are really looking forward to, simply because Regigigas has a huge fan base for just being awesome. Anyway, this EX has the main attack of Raging Hammer, which does 50 damage for 4 energy, at first sounding quite bad. However, for each damage counter on Regigigas, you do 10 more damage to the defending Pokemon, and since Regigigas has 180 hit points, you could be doing up to 230 damage at maximum output. Now getting that perfect amount of damage counters onto this Pokemon is going to be tough, but I wouldn't second guess players trying this out with things like Reuniclus to control damage placements and take huge KOs when needed. The only thing with this strategy is that you're putting your Pokemon seriously close to an easy KO on your opponent's side, giving them 2 prizes. So Regigigas could be extremely fragile but extremely powerful at the same time. Let's see if this guy causes any kind of storm at future tournaments. So we come to the last Pokemon in the set, and it's a big one. This card has been getting hype since it was released in Japan, and Mewtwo EX brings us an extremely powerful force to always be aware of in the upcoming format. This Pokemon is all about the first attack, even though the other one sports a very nice 120 damage output. However, X-Ball is the one that's going to be causing players issues all over the place. For just a double colourless, Mewtwo does 20 damage times the amount of energy attached to both Mewtwo and the defending Pokemon. So if the defending Pokemon has no energy attached, Mewtwo does 40 damage, but as the energy amount goes up, Mewtwo is going to start hitting out some incredible damage, not counting what you can pile onto Mewtwo itself to power it up further. This card is going to make you second guess attaching 4 energy to your Reshiram EX to output 150, since Mewtwo is always a possibility to hit the field and be powered up in a single turn to return the favour. However, where things get interesting is that Mewtwo actually counters itself. If your opponent has just attacked with Mewtwo EX and you return with your own, both with 2 energy attached, you'll one-hit KO and take 2 prizes because of the psychic weakness. This is going to make dropping Mewtwo incredibly important, since when you play it, you need to expect that it will get return KO'd. This is going to add a high amount of skill to playing the card and should make for an interesting format when the next set of tournaments begin very soon. So finally, that is it from me about our new set Next Destinies, which is officially released on February the 8th. Make sure you get to your pre-releases near you right now and stock up on those EXs to start getting competitive with the new format. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of PokeClass. Make sure you rate, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you all next week. Thanks for watching.